Okay, let's dive right into this. For years, we've been completely obsessed with one big number when it comes to our diet, protein. But what if focusing on that single number is actually making us miss the bigger picture? Today, we're going to explore why the balance of what's inside that protein might just be the real key to our long-term health.
You know the question. It's on everyone's mind, right? From athletes to weekend warriors, we're all constantly tracking and calculating and worrying. Did I hit my protein target today? It's become this gold standard for eating healthy.
But what if I told you that question, am I getting enough protein, is fundamentally the wrong one to be asking? The research we're looking at today suggests there's a much more interesting and way more important story happening inside our bodies. So let's start by unpacking this whole protein number problem. Why doesn't just hitting a target gram count tell a whole story? Well, it's time to kind of look under the hood of what protein actually is.
Here's the thing. Your body doesn't just use protein as one big thing. Nope, it carefully breaks it down into these smaller parts called amino acids. And these are the real MVPs. They're building everything from your muscles to your hormones. They do all the work.
And this, right here, perfectly illustrates the core idea. Different amino acids are like different messages being sent to your body. Some are screaming, grow, build, get bigger, while others send a much calmer signal, like, okay, let's repair, let's stabilize, let's maintain. The pattern of those messages is what really matters.
Okay, so let's get to know the key players in this whole story. For our purposes, we can pretty much group them into two major teams, and they have very, very different jobs.
First up, you've got the growth drivers. Think of these guys, especially methionine and the branched-chain amino acids. You've probably heard of them as BCAAs, as the powerhouses. They are fantastic at activating the growth pathways in your body, absolutely essential for building muscle and tissue.
And then, on the other team, we have the metabolic stabilizers. These guys, like glycine and serine, are all about bringing balance to the force. They support repair, they help our bodies produce antioxidants, and they generally just keep our whole metabolic engine running nice and smooth.
Now, here's where the whole concept just clicks. It's a simple but really powerful analogy. The relationship between these two teams is basically like an accelerator and a brake in a car.
So think of methionine, one of our main growth drivers, as the gas pedal of your metabolism. It pushes growth, growth, growth. Then you've got glycine, a key stabilizer, acting as the brake. Now you obviously need both to drive safely, right? But what happens if your foot is just constantly slammed down on that accelerator?
And that question brings us to the huge problem with a lot of modern diets. We've kind of created a food pattern that heavily favors the accelerator, and we often forget the brake even exists.
You can see the contrast so clearly when you compare different ways of eating. The typical Western diet, it's just packed with foods that are super high in those growth-driving aminos. Think muscle meats, eggs, dairy. Meanwhile, the diets that are associated with longevity, well, they tend to be way more balanced, often featuring a lot more plant-based proteins.
I mean, this visual just says it all. We have this giant skyscraper of methionine, the accelerator, and then this tiny little speed bump for glycine, the brake. That is not a balanced system. That is a system that is primed for constant, unchecked acceleration. So what's the big deal? Well, the research suggests that this constant growth mode signal, without the balancing repair signals, is linked to things like accelerated aging and a higher risk for chronic diseases. You know, it's kind of like trying to drive your car in first gear at 80 miles an hour. Eventually, that engine is just going to wear out.
All right, I know that might sound a little bit scary, but the good news is we can totally influence this balance with our choices. So how do we find our way back to equilibrium?
The goal here isn't to, eliminate anything. It's all about shifting the overall pattern. By just incorporating more foods that have these balanced amino acid profiles, things like legumes, potatoes, whole grains, you naturally start to ease your foot off the accelerator and give the brake a chance to do its job. And the science on this is pretty amazing. In animal studies, for instance, just by reducing the amount of methionine without causing any kind of malnutrition, scientists have seen significant extensions in lifespan and big improvements in metabolic health. That's a huge clue about how important this balance really is. And for those of us who like a real, concrete number to aim for, research from longevity experts suggest that for most adults in midlife, a moderate protein intake right around this range, about 0.7 grams per kilogram of body weight, is associated with much better health outcomes. When it comes to longevity, more is definitely not always better. So the whole point of this, the big takeaway, is to completely reframe how we think about this stuff. We need to upgrade the question we're asking ourselves about protein.
Instead of just, am I getting enough? We should be asking, what kind of information am I sending to my body? Are you sending nonstop signals to grow, grow, grow? Or are you providing the building blocks it needs for balance, for repair, and for stability?
So I'll leave you with this to think about. Take a look at your own diet. Are you constantly flooring that metabolic accelerator, or are you giving your body the tools it needs to find that healthy, sustainable balance between growth and repair? The answer might just be the key to a longer, healthier life.